Have you ever been so heartbroken you felt physical pain? Like the saying broken heart actually made sense to you because it physically hurt your chest? Or what about the saying love will make you crazy? And the minute I knew those sayings were true was when I was old enough to be told these stories. My story today is about a woman that I knew my whole life who ended up in a psychiatric ward. I would like to start by saying that I do not have permission to tell this story. The lady that I'm talking about has already passed. I know that she herself would absolutely love that I am telling her story. And I will be using her real name because it's very relevant to the story. Imagine being so beautiful that when you are growing up, people actually stop you in the street to tell you how much you look like Marilyn Monroe. And people actually say things to you like, don't worry about school, your face is your fortune. I'm sure that really does a number on a woman. She was so beautiful, and so many people called her this as a nickname. They actually just changed her name to Dolly because she looked so much like a doll. Dolly grew up in a very poor family. There was a lot of mouths to feed. She had 5 sisters. So eventually, at a very young age, she was told she could no longer go to school. She needed to get a job and help out. Dolly never liked school, so she didn't mind doing this at all. She really believed that getting herself a job would be her big break. She was too poor to go to stage school, but she could get herself a job at the BBC. She didn't care what job she had to do. She was prepared to scrub toilets if she had to. She just knew in her heart that if somebody saw her there, they were bound to put her on TV. She was a double of Marilyn Monroe. Dolly does exactly that. She applies for a job and she actually gets it. Her job is going to be in the dinner area, the canteen. And she has some of her best times working at the BBC. She would get to serve some of the UK's biggest stars at the time, and even some Hollywood stars too. And they would often remark about how much she looked like Marilyn Monroe and how stunningly beautiful she was. But unfortunately, work on TV doesn't actually happen how Dolly thought it did. A big break would never actually come. Dolly was what I like to call an eternal optimist. Sometimes you meet people like this in life. No matter what life throws at them, they're just one of those people that will just keep getting up with a smile on their face. So she was starting to feel a little bit bored about serving celebrities. She would meet the man of her dreams. Now, I don't need to tell you that in those days, things like Tinder don't exist. And the only way you meet somebody is the old-fashioned way, in person. Being one of the younger sisters was only ever allowed to go to these dances where you'd meet a partner with her older sisters. They see each other from across the room. Dolly says he is the most handsome man she has ever seen. She likens him to Steve McQueen. Side note, he's right fitty, Google him. Her older sister, who is fiercely protective of her, is never far away from her side as he approaches. When she tells him her name, Dolly, he gives his friend a little nudge. He can't believe that the woman who he says looks like a doll, her name is actually Dolly. They would fall madly in love and have lots of children, not lots of anything else. They were very poor, just like their parents had been. Dolly didn't care. She always knew in her heart that she was destined to be famous, and she held on to this belief. Everything that they had to endure would just be part of a very interesting story when she had to write her biography. She'd be far more relatable for all the struggles that she went through. And I still think about that, like, what an amazing and unique viewpoint to have of your life. Like, every time something bad happens to you, she would see it as a chapter that someone's going to read and be like, wow, look how far she's come. She would have been amazing on TikTok, like one of the most interesting people ever. Together they would raise their children in a very unique way. Both of them were very fiery. Both of them could be quite selfish, but they had one thing in common. They adored their children. Another big part of Dolly's dream life was always staying nearby to her sisters, particularly her best friend. Because I don't want to offend anyone, and this part of the story is not mine to tell, I'm going to call this sister Bella, which is a fake name. And on the same night that Dolly had met her husband, father of her children, her sister, her best friend Bella, had also met what would become her husband. And it just so happened that her husband was Dolly's husband's brother. Do you follow me? So you've got 2 sisters married to 2 brothers who would eventually move in just next door to each other. Fairy tale life would continue for quite some time. That was up until Dolly was pregnant with their last child. Because one night, after hearing several whispers on the street about her husband, she would come to find out that he had in fact been having an affair. And the affair was with her own sister, Bella. I mean, for real, I can see exactly why she had to be sectioned after this, because I have no words for that. So imagine this. Dolly is heavily pregnant, due to go into labour any day, and she finds out that her sister and her husband have been having an affair. She doesn't know how long the affair's been going on, but she does know that her sister is pregnant. Yes, that's right. Her sister is also pregnant. And for some context, her sister had struggled to conceive. She'd been having fertility problems, likely to actually be the baby of her own husband. It comes to the day of having the baby, and she is not in a good way. She is understandably out of her mind. The nurses and doctors in the hospital start to notice that maybe she's not okay and maybe she can't take care of this baby. They let her husband know that they think it would be best that she checked into some sort of hospital. And in these hospitals, they don't have the facilities for a baby too. So Dolly goes alone. That's what was known as a mental breakdown. She gets herself together. She comes out of the hospital, and her and her husband do the British thing. They sweep everything under the rug, and no one ever knows or ever speaks about the child that technically, probably, could be the child of her husband and her sister. She lives a good life. He provides well. She never has to get a job, something she's very proud of. She continues in the faith that one day she will write her own book and be famous for it. And despite the fact that things never worked out for her, she continues to teach any pretty girl she comes across that she doesn't need to do well in school because her face will be her fortune. And on her 80th birthday, with 120 people gathered around, in true Dolly fashion, she takes the hand of one of her grandchildren, one of her 20-odd grandchildren, takes them up onto the stage of the marquee with a tiara on her head that said birthday girl. She thanks everyone for coming, and in true Dolly fashion, dramatically, gracefully, she announces to everyone that the woman they love and cherish as their cousin is in fact their half-sister. The marquee is silent. You could hear a hairpin drop. We're going to need a part 2 to this.